Midcoast Community Council is now in session. I do want to emphasize, since we have a number of people here, that if you want to speak on any topic, either on the agenda or not, you do have to have a speaker slip, you do have to go to the podium, and you do have to stay within 3 minutes. And we will be keeping time on that. So make sure we have these if you do want to say anything. Okay, Board of Supervisors report, I think there is not going to be one. Pardon me?
That's correct.
Please introduce yourselves.
Dan Haggerty.
Len Erickson.
Tamar Powell.
Michelle Weil.
Claire Tuton.
Barbara Mathewson.
Dave Olson.
I do not think we have a Board of Supervisors report tonight, so we'll skip that. Harvey?
Yeah. Good evening, council, community. Harvey Ryback, Mayor of Half Moon Bay. It's been a while since I've been here, so I've accumulated a number of items that are of interest, I think, to the Midcoast. The City Council met and we have set our priorities for this upcoming year, and some of them directly affect the Midcoast and I think are of interest to you. One of the things, the highest priority we decided was affordable housing. And contrary to what some of you may think about affordable housing on the Mid-Coast and its relevance, I think we all agree that the right place to do affordable housing is right next to the services, the transportation, everything that downtown has to offer. So we're going to be working very hard on the City Council this year to actually build some affordable housing. So I think that's of interest to the whole coast side. A second priority that we set was traffic management, and that's a perpetual issue. It's not easy, but we're going to try to do something about alleviating the gridlock and congestion that we have. One of the things we were talking about is reinstituting park and rides, and having maybe a shuttle around. So that's our second priority that we have decided on. Thirdly, we are going to work towards a $15 an hour minimum wage. That's going to take some concentration on figuring out how we want to do that with, minimum number of employees, but I think that's really important to bolster our whole coastside community. Fourth item that we decided was important for us as a city council was emergency preparedness. And you're going to hear today about what can happen when it goes wrong. And our city manager, Bob Nisbet, is here, and he's going to talk a little bit more about what the city is going to be sponsoring in terms of having an emergency preparedness event. And fifth item that we had decided was environmental sustainability, that we want Half Moon Bay to be a leader in showing how we can address sustainability, sea level rise, erosion, all the problems that we're facing and are going to be getting worse in the near future. So that's our priority setting. A couple of other announcements. Recently, the Highway 1 north for us, south for you, safety design was approved by the council. And those of you who don't know, that design will include a traffic signal at Terrace Avenue, a widening to 4 lanes right before Terrace Avenue, and then going back down to the 2 lanes before Grandview. We hope that will improve traffic flow. But that is now, the design is going out and probably will be built by 2022. We also approved a Community Services Financial Assistance Program, and that's a fancy way of saying that organizations, nonprofits that help the community are going to be eligible for grants from the city council. We've appropriated a total of $150,000 in the upcoming year. So if you are affiliated with some nonprofit that helps the coast side, it doesn't have to be exclusively for Half Moon Bay. Some of the organizations like Coastside Hope work both inside the city and outside, and they're eligible for these grants. And the application period will start on Monday, and if you need, the applications will be available on our website. So that might be of interest to organizations that want to help our community. And lastly, I believe that on April 15th at 7 p.m., Senator Jerry Hill has organized a meeting, and I think as of now it's going to be at the high school, the Half Moon Bay High School, that's going to be talking about emergency preparedness in terms of what happened on March 12th, and I believe that Comcast, AT&T, Caltrans, and PG&E are all going to be there. So our legislators, our state legislatures are really behind this effort, and it should be an interesting event, nothing else. I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has. Thank you. Bob?
I think,
Two questions.
Oh, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, okay, Barbara?
Harvey, you did, about 4 or 5 months ago, you came and talked about traffic control down at Highway 1 and 92.
Yeah.
And this last weekend, it looks like finally they started doing that control. Is this now going to be every weekend, or is it just going to be sporadic when they do that?
What did they do exactly?
They were not letting people, the sheriff and highway patrol were ticketing people that were in the intersection after the light to keep the traffic flowing.
Yeah, the sheriff is aware of the hot spot, and they're going to get out there.
No, I get
extra
that.
work when
I'm
they can.
just, you had said it was going to be a regular thing several months ago, and I was just wondering if now it's going to be ongoing from now on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Dan, you had a question?
Yes. Hello, Harvey. I've lived on the coast here about 30 years, regularly travel Highway 1, both directions. Concern, question, I guess, regarding the traffic improvements northbound. It's my opinion that, the main cause for the backup, if you're wanting to go north on Highway 1 from 92 or Main Street, how it backs up like that all the way up to Frenchman's Creek. I parked on the side of Frenchman's Creek, in the parking lot over there, and I timed a car coming out of Frenchman's Creek, pulls up. I know that there's inductive sensors. The traffic control system senses that car that wants to make that turn, and the time was about 20 seconds. So one car wanting to make a turn, and there's 100 cars backed up. So the thought that I had is, can we look at potentially adjusting the program of that controller to keep that light green a little bit longer, so that maybe when a car comes out of Frenchman's Creek, we might wait a minute or 2 minutes. Giving potentially a chance for another, having 2 cars turning. And the other thing I've noticed is a lot of traffic signals, when they're timed like that, and they're, we call them smart intersections, whatever. When they're sensed like that, they know that the car has left, and even in the middle of the intersection, the light's already turned yellow if there's no car behind it. You follow me? So that allows for that dominant flow to get green again. for the light to turn green to help that dominant flow. You know, once you get past Frenchman's Creek, there's really no problem. So
It's good to hear.
it's in my opinion that the Frenchman Creek light and how it's programmed is a major factor of the backup from Frenchman's Creek to 292. And I don't know that making 4 lanes there.
The 4 lanes is not going to be there at Frenchman's Creek. It's going to be much further south.
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, the idea is to help the north traffic flow, right? So it's just gonna bottleneck, in my opinion. I think the key thing to look at is the light at Frenchman's Creek.
Okay,
Okay.
So
I
has there
suggest-
been any discussion on that?
that's probably getting
Yeah,
beyond the scope
yeah,
of.
yeah.
Well, just ask
Yeah.
the question.
No, I
laid it out.
suggest you talk to Ray Rosavi, our traffic engineer, and, you know, he's very receptive and.
So you have no knowledge of any discussion?
No,
Okay.
that particular intersection should have been 4 lane a
I've
long
heard
time
that.
ago.
Yeah.
But it was done in an emergency, and it was in violation of the standard Caltrans protocol for traffic lights. And we hope that that'll get fixed, but not in the immediate future.
Thank you,
so
Harvey.
much.
Are there any other government?
Actually, I have one more,
No, let's just move on.
about the housing. Just a fast question.
Fast question.
Apartments, condominiums, homeowners, renters, affordable housing, do you know which direction it's going?
I know which direction I want, but I'm only one of 5.
Apartments?
Yeah, that's what I want.
Okay.
Thank you, Council. Bob Nosbit, City Manager. And as Harvey said, one of the top 5 priorities is emergency preparedness. And so I just wanted to make an announcement of an event that's coming up that the city's hosting and give each of you a brochure about the event. There's 25 copies here, so there's plenty for everyone who's here today. But we are hosting we're calling it a Community Preparedness Day on May 4th from 12 to 4. We're going to be closing off 2 blocks of Kelly Street. We're inviting lots of different agencies, nonprofits, other partners to have tables at the event. There's going to be some equipment there. You know that kids like big equipment, shiny equipment, food, other things. So we want to make it fun. We're trying to get the word out as much as possible. I will just start passing these on, and whatever's left over, we can put at the front of the counter. So we just want to encourage everyone to come. It's not just a Half Moon Bay event. It's a Coastside event. Coastside Community Preparedness Day, that's what it's called. Also, coincidentally, there's going to be a concert or music at 5 o'clock in Max Dutra Park. So you get a 2-for-1, come down, emergency preparedness all day, get a quick bite in downtown Half Moon Bay, and then stay for the music. Should be a lot of fun. And that's my announcement. If there's any questions, be happy to take them. I'd also just like to say I was before you when I first started about 5 months ago. It's now been 5 months, and I'm also a resident of El Granada. I just live right over there, and I walked down here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other government announcements? Highway Patrol? You came back?
Good evening, council members, members of the public, community here. I just wanted to come by the meeting today and also introduce one of our new supervisors that just transferred to the Redwood City area. Sergeant Dan Hill comes from the San Jose area, about over 3 years of experience as a supervisor. He's from the area, from the community, from San Mateo County, and just want to introduce him to you guys as a meeting here at council. Also, I did advise our supervisors in the area to step up their enforcements for the tinted windows.
Thank you.
And for Nation Patrol for DUI enforcement, speed, and things of that nature. So that's about it.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other government announcements, reports? We will open this up for public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. I have one speaker slip. I have one other from Harold, and I don't know what the topic is. Is this something on the agenda or not?
It's a question about the tunnel and how it's...
Okay, so that'll be on the agenda. Okay. So I have one speaker slip from Greg Diegas.
I just want to say, I reviewed the video of my last talk on fire preparedness, and I'm giving an update.
3 minutes.
And I now appreciate the courage it takes to be on the MCC, because I watched myself on that video, and it's just not a pretty sight. So I wanted to let you know that the last time I talked to you, I had gotten the test statistics on the fire hydrants in Montera and CCWD. I've now got the complete inventory of all fire hydrants, and I can give you just a little prelim. I still have work to do. I have to digitize reams of stuff and put it in a spreadsheet and so forth, and you'll get a written report. But just using the old-fashioned counting method. In the last 10 years, 15 hydrants have been tested in Montera's water district out of 164. That's 9%, or less than 1% a year being tested. Of those 15, 6 of them, in this layperson's opinion, failed seriously. Okay? Now, that's in line with the 39% they reported in their master plan 2 years ago were deficient in Moss Beach, except that it may apply to the whole inventory. We don't know, because 92% of the hydrants haven't been tested in 10 years. In CCWD, there are 628 hydrants, of which 53 have been tested in the last 10 years. The good news is there's only one of those tested that appears to be a little bit deficient, but that means, again, only 8.44% of the hydrants have been tested in the last 10 years. Now, the implication of this is fire preparedness, wildfire. There are bigger questions like, are we going to be able to get, tankers full of water over here in time to fight a fire? Would we have to draw on multiple hydrants at the same time? What would be the combinatorial pressure drop if we were using more than one hydrant at a time? But, just off the top of your head, it doesn't look like we're that prepared. Finally, I don't have that ISO report, which is the insurance industry report, which would allow us to assess our fire preparedness as a surrogate for actually having a project commission for somebody to do it. I'm now going to elevate it back to Supervisor Horsley and the 2 people in his office who volunteered to help me. The fire chief had some turnover in their department. The chief who had the report left. They can't find it so far. If we get hit by lightning, maybe I get that ISO report and I could give you a more substantive qualitative assessment. But right now I can't. So I just want you to know, hopefully 2 weeks from now I'll have something to say about getting you the ISO report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Announcements are mostly about Earth Day and related events. There's a coastal wildflower celebration and Earth Day event at Francis Beach this Saturday from 10 to 3. The Pacifica Beach Coalition is now the Pacific Beach Coalition, and they're an umbrella agency for a lot of Earth Day events on the coast on the 27th, and there's some flyers out there for them. If you go to their website, you can get a list of what's going on, quite a bit, actually. The Peninsula Clean Energy Group is offering free pickup and a $35 refund for any working refrigerator or freezer that people want to recycle. And the Climate Ready Collaboration, which is working with wildfires and floods and sea level rise, is having a pilot project planning day on the 30th of April, and you can look at the Sustainability Office website for more details on that. I think that, Dave, you had another announcement?
Yeah. I have one. For those who are concerned about coastal armoring, the project at the end of Moraga Road was on the Coastal Commission agenda today, but was postponed yet again. The report is there. I've looked at it. As seawalls go, it's pretty good, but you should look at it for yourself if you care about seawalls on the coast.
Thank you.
And you may want to make a comment.
Barbara?
Yeah, thank you. On Thursday, April 18th, Caltrans is, the Adopt a Highway wants us to participate on doing a cleanup on Earth Day. So I'd like to schedule one for Thursday, April 18th. If anybody can come to that, that would be great. Let me know so we have enough pickers and what have you, and you read the video. But that's April 18th.
Okay, thank you. Any other council announcements? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda, but I do want to remind you, if you want to speak on anything that's on the agenda, including the Caltrans presentation, you do have to fill out a speaker slip. So if you want to speak, we need to have that. The consent agenda, there's 3 items on the agenda. I am going to withdraw item C, which is expenditures to be allocated for community outreach events. Just to let you know, we were invited to participate in the event on May 4th, and this was intended to help us prepare for that. I think we need a little bit more lead time in order to put on a well-balanced presentation, but we will be working to do that, and Michelle will be spearheading that. So there's 2 items left on the consent agenda.
The secretary will
Oh, yes,
say
we-
that regrettably, I did not get the minutes done for March 27th somehow, so we have to pull that from the consent agenda.
All right, there's 1 item left on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to?
I'll make a motion, we approve the updates to the 2019 MCC committee and task assignments and the work plan priorities.
Second?
Before we approve it, I'll say that there's a couple of minor errors in there, but I'll send mail for and correct them.
I didn't quite hear you.
I'm saying there are some minor errors, discrepancies between the 2 documents.
Do you want to pull
I'll
it?
notify Lynn, but
Okay.
I don't think that affects.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor? 7-0. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. The first item on the agenda is the presentation from Parka regarding their annual double slide run and ride.
Will you be needing the projector?
There is literature attached to the agenda if you want to take a look at that, but we don't need a projector.
Anybody else need a copy?
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diana Conti. I'm the CEO of Parka. Parka's been around since 1952, serving people with developmental disabilities in San Mateo County. So we serve between 750 and 1,000 people a year, and we're always fundraising. And so we are back here for the 8th time. This will be our 8th year for the Devil Slide Ride and the Devil Slide Run. So we come before you each year to make sure we have permission to use parts of the course that pertain to you. And there's really nothing different this year than we've done in the past years. It's the same course. We anticipate about the same number of riders. We really go out of our way to make sure that we have big crews that come in and do cleanup afterwards. We use biodegradable arrows that can be removed as course markers. We have volunteers who make sure there's trash cleanup. We have many instructions and course marshals for all of the participants to make sure they practice good safety. This will be our 3rd year we had added an additional aid station because the part of the road is getting eroded just before you go through the Devil Slide Tunnel northbound. So we now have an aid station for people who are uncomfortable on that skinny, skinny shoulder where they can go to the school, and we have vans that will transport them a couple of miles to the other side so that they can do that. So this is Serenetta Leone, who is our development consultant and does all the permits. We get about 20 permits to do this, and we've achieved them all at this point. And this is Elias Olson, who is our ride director. He's also my husband. He's our volunteer, in quotes. And so I think I will open it up for questions.
Anyone on the council have questions? Anyone in the community?
So let me just say thank you for being wonderful hosts to us. And we're actually delighted that we can have this event on the coast. It's so beautiful. And it really is the beauty of the coast is a lot of what draws the people to it. So we get about 600 people a year, and they're not just from the area. We get some people out of state. We've got a few people out of country who come to this. So it really showcases how gorgeous this is. So it's a very fun event, and the best part of it for us is that we have our clients helping at the aid station. So it raises money for us, but one of the things I tell all the participants afterwards is that the interaction between the two groups really means as much as the money that we raise. The participants are so excited, enthusiastic, and so are the clients. So the participants are people who really like to challenge themselves, and our clients are people who challenge themselves every day. So it's a really good mix, and it's just a wonderful event where everybody is really appreciating each other. So if any of you are so inclined, you're welcome to join us. And and if you don't want to do the ride or the run, we have a dog walk whale talk, which we're calling Whales, Trails, and Puppy Dog Tales. So we have a marine biologist who's going to come and talk about whales. And the first year we did this, 3 whales showed up. So we can't guarantee that, but we can hope. And then we have an easy walk for people who just want to support Parka, and then we have a dog walk that's really to foster dog-friendly activities, but we can separate it. Sometimes we have some clients who are afraid of dogs, so we have 2 different groups doing that. So, huh?
June 8th.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Saturday, June 8th. Yeah.
What time?
Well, it depends. Starting at 6:30 if the metric and the century and the metric century, and then 7:30 for the 40 mile, and 10 o'clock for the walk.
Is there an age minimum for the walks? Any
Pardon me?
age restrictions for the walks? Any age restrictions?
Age restrictions for the
No.
walks.
Okay.
No, and we charge $20 per person for the walk. For people 13 and over, and anybody under 12 is free.
Thank you.
12 and under is free.
What time do you expect traffic on Highway 1 to be affected? Just like a window of time?
I think that's on there. It's mostly from 6:45 to 7:45.
Right, 6:45 and by the time they get out to Highway 1, because they use the trail, we have CHP takes them up to the trail.
Okay.
And then from when they emerge from the trail, they're already kind of single file at that point, so it's not like, like you see in like pelotons or something like that. It's mostly like single file traffic, but that's early. It's like 6:45, 7:45. And our second group is a smaller group, and that's around 7:45
Okay.
to 8 o'clock.
Yeah, there's a wide variety because of the distances, but also some people are a lot faster than other people on this. So it's pretty much spread out all the way until about 5 o'clock at night.
Oh, okay.
Some people are very slow.
Claire?
Yes.
So for the people who might watch this on the video, what's the website that they can go register?
It's www.doubleslideride.org. And there is a video on there.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed
I'd just
coming.
like to thank you, all 3 of you, for all of the hard work. I know there's a lot involved in a number of months ahead of time.
Thank you.
For all the work you've done to make this happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Enjoy it. Okay. We're going to move on into item B on the regular agenda, which is this discussion of the tunnel closure and events of March 12th. I want to make sure that we stay on topic here. This is strictly related to the events of March 12th and specifically to the tunnel closure. I still only have 1 speaker slip. Nobody else wants to speak.
After the presentation? Or?
No, I'd like to have them now.
Okay, so we should hold off on...
Yeah.
No, we're going to do the presentation now.
He's just asking for speaker slips.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
We're going to do the presentation now. Got it.
But I have to have them before we start talking. Okay, so we're going to start with a brief presentation of the timeline and how the events affected the community, and Michelle will present that.
So this is meant to be kind of I gathered this information from a variety of sources. Now that I see the projector, I'm not sure if you guys can read it, so I'll try to read a lot of it to you. But primarily what I'm trying to capture here are the events of March 12th into March 13th, and I'll do that across 3 slides. On the top are the official announcements that went out, either from the SMC alert system, in which the first announcement came out just after 3:30 on March 12th, 3:30 p.m. And then we also saw announcements from the Pacifica Police on Twitter. That happened right around the same time, just after 3:30. Caltrans' first announcement announcing the closure happened around 4:40 p.m. Later in the evening, we had some SIG alerts that were reflected by 511 Bay Area or 511 Bay Area. We actually had a confusion, and I know that some people that live in the area were confused as well, because this was picked up by a radio station where they said that the tunnel was back open around 6 p.m. Going back to the original, the alert that went out via text and email around 3:30, it did say that the tunnel would be back open at 5:45. As we all know, it didn't open until 12:30 a.m. the next morning, but this is meant to try to reflect at the top the official announcements that went out, and on the bottom some of the things that residents experienced and communicated via Nextdoor. So shortly after the power went out, people were still actually able to go through the tunnel. After they had received the alerts, they were commenting that they were still able to go through, but the power was out, the lights were out. But a little bit later, kind of around, I don't have the exact timeline, but around 4 or 4:30, it was definitely closed in both directions. Around 6 p.m., the news said it was open, but it was still closed. At 6:50, I think that, sorry, it's like blurry on the screen, but I think around 6:30, the CHP of San Francisco announced that the power was back on inside the tunnel, but the lanes were made closed, and the estimate for opening was about an hour. However, as we saw, people were complaining still that it was still closed at 7. Power at Lindemar was back on around 7:30. Still, the tunnel remained closed. We had a lot of experiences from people who were kind of waiting out the opening of the tunnel in Pacifica, and were stuck there. I think some of us experienced it as well. I have, one person that said, that's worrisome. I have pups and a kid waiting at home. I've stuck it out here, still hoping the 7:40 timeline would be accurate. Another person said, power, it's at 7 p.m., still closed. We're waiting since 5 p.m. Thought it would open at 7 p.m. I have a 5-year-old in the car, starting to lose patience. And so that continued. And then around 8 p.m., people started to note, a lot of people had decided to go around and take Highway 92, which is basically the only other major road to get home if you live here on the coast. And, that became very slow going, in part because tree work started. We saw, people taking several hours to get home by going around. One person said, they left Pacifica at 6 p.m. and got home to Montera at 9 p.m. Another person said they gave up and they rented a hotel room in Pacifica, so close to El Granada yet so far. So it was very, I think we didn't, as you can see on the timeline, there was no additional SMC alert that came out in this time period. We had, it seemed like after around 10 p.m., any sort of public announcements trailed off. I think people were going to bed, and, except for the people that were stuck in this. We had people on Nextdoor stating that they left Pacifica and tried to go on 92, but ended up taking Highway 84 and going all the way around, and that was actually even faster than trying to wait for the the controlled traffic and the tree work that was happening on Highway 92. One person did wait until midnight, and then it only took them 45 minutes, whereas other people that had left it an hour or two earlier were taking 2 to 3 hours to get home. And then finally, the tunnel reopened. Via news reports, we see that it reopened around 12:30 a.m. And the first public comment stating that it was reopened was by Tony Tavares, the Caltrans District 4 director, stating at around 4:30 in the morning that it was open. We saw Pacifica Police tweet around 5 a.m., so that at least communicated to people that it was open. And then we had the official SMC alert come out at 9:30 a.m. the next morning. So that's just to give an idea of the timeline and the events that happened on those days.
Thank you, Michelle. So I'll ask Len to introduce the second part of this topic.
Sure.
But wait, one second. We have put together an advisement for the speaker from Caltrans, focusing on what we would like them to address, and it includes policies, communications, coordination, and possible technical solutions. So I'll turn it over to Len.
Okay, thank you. I've been in touch with Jeff Weiss. He's a public information officer with Caltrans and is here with one other person to give us an update. As Claire said, we provided the information we could from our end to provide a level set start, and I'll turn it over to you, Jeff.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me, and I brought some people with me in case I get stuck. It's some of the information that we'll be talking about gets kind of technical. So this is Earl Sherman. He is the maintenance supervisor for the West Bay, covering, of course, San Mateo County.
I've actually got San Mateo, San Francisco, and Santa Clara counties maintenance responsibility, not the tunnel responsibility, but we still respond to anything on Highway 1.
And do you guys want to be interviewed? We have Ray Bynes, supervisor for Half Moon Bay. And he, you work at the tunnel, right? So we have someone who works at the tunnel to answer your question. And then Scott Collins as well. So just in case we get stuck. So let me just briefly, I know what you spoke about, and I think maybe if I just summarize what happened and then go over it in a little more detail, you'll have an understanding of what occurred, and then we can sort of talk about how we can communicate and problem solve in the future. We've had these issues in other communities, particularly Pacifica, and I think we did a good job at solving that. And hopefully we can do the same thing here, where we can develop a sort of a reliable system of communication so that if people get stuck, and it's likely, I mean, there's going to be things that happen in this area. One of the reasons why this area is so beautiful is because you have narrow roads that keeps it from being, a large community with a lot of people passing through. But narrow roads, of course, have the drawback of getting congested. So everyone knows what we're talking about. It's March 12th. The power went out to the Devil's Slide Tunnel, and because the tunnel was lacking power, we had to close the tunnel. And the reason why we have to close the tunnel is the power that we have on hand is something called UPS. What's that mean?
Uninterrupted
power source. There we go. Okay. And so we have the UPS out there, but it is not powerful enough to operate the jet fans. And I know that a lot of people would say, well, I'll go through it anyways. I don't worry about that. But that's part of the plan given to us by the fire marshal for the state. So we cannot operate the tunnel, let people pass through while the jet fans are underpowered. In case there's an accident, the jet fans have to come on to blow the smoke out. So the tunnel is shut, and concurrent with that, there is a permit with PG&E to maintain a gas line on Route 92. And on 92, of course, is the alternate to come into Half Moon Bay if you're not coming from the north. And that permit was given so that they could maintain this gas line. And so it's just a little more than tree trimming, which is what we described in the newspaper. What it was some of the trees were so large that the roots were growing into the underground gas main. So in order to maintain the gas line so that it wouldn't be damaged by the tree roots, the trees were being pulled up by the roots. So this was a difficult closure. We had to bring a crane out. I'm sorry, we didn't bring the crane. PG&E brought the crane. And it's a big crane. It's got counterweights and it's got a platform that it operates on. So this causes a lot of congestion because people from the tunnel are going north to go south to go east again to get home. And that closure was not pulled up, and so we had it back up. What we did to alert the public was that we sent out 4 messages from the Caltrans Traffic Management Center in Oakland. One at 4 o'clock saying the tunnel is closed, we're having electrical problems. Another one around 6:30 saying the tunnel is still closed, and I'm sorry, the first one said that we presume the tunnel, not presume, but ETO of the tunnel is 6:30. So, I'm looking at that and going, that's bad, but it's not horrible. So if we can get back open. And they were in communication with PG&E over at the tunnel, and that was the estimate. Also, we activated 9 changeable message signs, which are these overhead signs that you can program, and they're called changeable, meaning you can change the message, type in the message. Double slide is closed, take alternative routes. Tunnel should be open by 6:30. So those are the communications that we put out. We presume, and I guess it didn't happen, but we've always had great success by putting out what was called SIG alerts, which are important messages about traffic. That these get picked up by traffic reporters and by the media, and it's televised. And we have, usually they've been picked up by local agencies as well, who tweet them as well. And it didn't happen as much as we thought would happen. And it was a little spotty, and there's probably some reasons for that we can discuss. So, lost my train of thought here. So then these messages went out, but the tunnel did not open, which is the next part, until 12:30 at night. And the reason it did not open is because the power was restored, and I don't know the details of exactly when, but it took about 2 hours for the power to be restored. But there's 2 or 3 sources of the power.
It's called a two-phase,
Two-phase,
I guess.
okay.
And one phase was sufficient, one phase was not. So PG&E had to be called back to deal with that issue. So there was power. There wasn't sufficient power to power the tunnel systems. Once you do get sufficient power to the tunnel systems, then they have to reboot the system, which can take about an hour. But they had to get that power situation dealt with from PG&E. The power wasn't what it needed to be.
Correct. So they couldn't get the power back to the tunnel, and the tunnel couldn't open. And of course, that had an effect on the lane closure because there's a big crane there. And our assumption was, moving this crane is going to take, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours?
The breakdown on the crane was, but out in the field, CHP was on site with PG&E, and PG&E was very cooperative with CHP. CHP said, can you pick this up? And they discussed how long it would take to break down this crane. So the decision was made. CHP started, I guess, giving the westbound traffic a bigger traffic window. They started letting those people run 20 minutes at a time, minimizing the traffic going eastbound, and trying to get people through to adjust for that or to mitigate that issue. Because they still would have had to have the one-way traffic control in to break down the train.
So that is what caused the problem, and there's a lot of facets that we're working on, and every day I get more emails talking about various things. One, the communication that we'd like to make to talk about this. Some people want to talk about whether there could be an upgrade at the tunnel to the power so that this wouldn't happen again, because this is a very rare thing, but it did happen. And some of the, maybe another thing is, when do you call and say, pick up the lane? So I think those are the topics that we are going to talk about and how we can improve that. So, my idea is that we will develop a communication plan and share it with you about what we're going to do, handle these emergencies in the future. And it'll be something in written form, and it'll talk about, how we're going to put messages on the changeable message signs, how many we'll use. We'll talk about, our communication. I think a lot of people have been relying on SMCC.
SMC.
Yeah, and for some reason, and I'm not blaming them, they didn't put out some of the TMC alerts. And I think that really, Sean Nazari, who's our traffic guy, he lives in San Mateo County, he gets those alerts, so he was watching it too. So, maybe we link up with them to get a better rapport going with them and what they're going to do. And then we can talk about, share information with you guys about, where to go to get this information, particularly 511, and some other sources that are Caltrans Quick Maps on our webpage is a good source, because all the information from the Traffic Management Center goes to the quick map that is on the front of our website in Caltrans District 4. So that automatically updates that. So that's another really good resource that we could, share with you, and you could share next door to get out to people. And then, so I think the communication is the key. And then, we're just going to have to look at what happened at the tunnel, because, we thought the power would be on a lot sooner than it was. And we used the estimates given to us by PG&E, but it didn't work at the tunnel. And so because of that, we left the lane closure in place, because it would have taken as long to move the lane closure than to, we would have taken part of another lane and things like that.
And we've already started to adjust. We just had something happen yesterday where we had a traffic accident on Devil's Slide, and the recovery took a long time. The captain of Redwood City called me and said, hey, we've got this issue up here. I called TMC and I said, could you please get hold of PG&E and delay them putting in the closure on 92 until this is cleared up. To my knowledge, that happened. They cleared that up at 7:30. The closure on 92 didn't go in until about 9:14. So there are already communications going on to alleviate these types of things.
Yeah, and the CHP, they did what they were supposed to do as well. Reading a message from them, in an attempt to relieve some of the congestion, CHP requested the tree trimming detail be canceled. However, the tree trimming detail could not be stopped because it involved a large crane, which could not easily be dismantled. Despite this, CHP units were able to get the tree crew to stop work to allow one-way traffic control to clear the traffic back up. So there were experienced people dealing with it, but this is our first time through something like this, and we hope to learn from it, and we hope to be able to communicate better in the future. And it's a learning experience and for everyone. And like Earl just said, we had another occasion yesterday, and where I think we got the alerts out in time. It was not an easy thing to deal with, trying to drag a car. Does everyone know what happened yesterday?
Yeah.
Drag a car up from the depths of the beach. But I think the system we used worked well, and this is a work in progress, and we want to share what our findings are with you. We're learning more every day, and we'll share it with the Midcoast Community Council.
Did you want to touch on all these?
Well, there's a good point. I thought, Claire, the first thing we would do here is council members may have just some questions of clarification as opposed to comment type questions. And so just to show you what I mean, our information pretty much confirmed all sources was somewhere in the 8:30 p.m. range, the power was restored in Pacifica. I understand from what you said that once power is restored, you still have to go through an overall restart of your system, and it sounds like that itself takes an hour or more just to restart the fans that actually need to be cleared. Is that more or less right?
Is that true?
And so let's say that's an hour or two, but then once you started, you found you had insufficient power, so you literally had to redo that cycle again. So that sounds like that's another hour or two. What I've been trying to understand for us to be clear on is that although the power came on at 8:30, let's say in Pacifica, during that 4 hours you had to restart, that took 1 to 2 hours. You had to learn that that was not effective, get that word out, and then do it again. So that seems to in large part to account for why there's such a large discrepancy between power on in Pacifica and the tunnel actually reopening. Is that?
What happened is,
Can you come up?
At the time the power was restored, we had to wait for at least 20 to 30 minutes to stabilize the power. But unfortunately, when we did our reading, the voltage, as he was referring, the phase-to-phase, there are 3 phases, A to B, B to C, and A to C, there was an unbalance. And we are completely automated there. And which means most of our equipment controls are electronics. So we have to make sure that the voltage supply is balanced. And we even have to get PG&E to help us out. Because the first thing that, I don't want to go to details, but you see, we have 3 equipment chambers there. And each chamber is self-contained, meaning it has to generate a transformer there, a power transformer, which steps down from 12 to 480. And there is an automatic transfer switch on each chamber. And if that phase is not balanced, it will not work. And that's the problem that we had. So we have to get PG&E to help us out on it, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay. So that means from your control center, if the power, let's say at Central Control Center knows the power's on in Pacifica, and with that information, they would know it's going to be at least an hour or 2 before full power's back in the tunnel.
Was that always the case? I mean, if everything goes right, if your power comes in balanced.
Yeah. Normally, it only takes us 30 minutes. Once we see that the readings are all same, then we can power up our equipment, but unfortunately.
So in this case, it wasn't. It took you a while to recognize that and then restart the whole cycle.
No, we wait for, as I said, we wait for the power to stabilize. Now, when we see that the voltages are balanced, meaning like 12 kV on each phase, then we can power up all our equipment, especially what we call our SCADA system, which is completely automatic.
Why don't we go around the table and have each person get a chance to ask some questions and make a statement? We'll keep it to 3 minutes each, though.
I don't have any clarifying questions. I have other comments, but
I do have a.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, I'll be last.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a few questions. So you mentioned, Jeff, that the SIG alerts were, they went out. Are those four messages that went out, those are SIG alerts?
correct.
And then how does, a person that's not in the government access those? Is there a website? And are you just relying on other sources to pick it up and, news sources to distribute that?
I think there's
Yes, SIG alerts, I'll be happy to help you. SIG alerts are broadcast through CHP and Caltrans through the Traffic Management Center, which is in Oakland.
Okay.
511 Bay Area has a website and also a Twitter feed that rebroadcasts all of those messages. It's the entire Bay Area wide. That's the widest dissemination that's available is through 511 Bay Area. It's on there. That's a Twitter handle that you can use. Jeff said, most of the time when the media outlets are on, they're paying attention to that and rebroadcasting that information for us. But at the minimum, that's broadcast out through 511 Bay Area, which is the best place to locate any SIG alert related to any Bay Area traffic situation.
Okay, thank you for that. So I did have those four, I know you probably couldn't read them, but I did have those four from 511's Twitter feed. That was the only place I was able to go and recapture what happened. But the one that came out at 6:16 p.m. said, update, residual delays on California 1 between 9th Street and Lindemar Boulevard in San Mateo County, all lanes open. That, I think that confused a lot of people, and I think that's what the news picked up.
I don't know where that came from.
It was on 511 Bay Area.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could do is investigate.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a big mistake that would cause people to stay where they are and ruin their evening. So I would have to look into that. And I
Okay.
can look into that and get back to you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear back on that. My other question is regarding the permits for the activities that PG&E was doing on Highway 92. There's been the signs, the changeable message signs up for a while now, and so I think everyone was known to expect that the tree trimming would occur. However, those signs said that it would start at 10 p.m. And I think they've since been changed. They now do. Okay.
I can tell you other one too.
Yeah.
7:30 and a little bit earlier.
7:30. But at the time of the tree trim, that night of March 12th, I drive 92 most days to work and back too, and I do remember at least some signs saying that the closures would be 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so I'm just wondering what time is the permit or at the office in Oakland, what time is that activity planned for? And could that be, obviously it started earlier than 10 p.m. that night, so could that be better communicated with the signs?
Right, you have any idea?
I know
Not to
that
put
was,
you
that
on.
was, no, that's okay, I went out 2 nights later to the
Can-
site,
can we get-
tree crew.
Oh, yeah, can you come up?
So I went out 2 nights later to see what they were doing, if they had a legal permit to be there, and checked on all that. And they made a mistake on the board. I mentioned to them, their board said 10 o'clock, their permit says 7:30. I saw the permit. So I made them, and that's when the board got changed,
Okay,
was after the fact.
good to know.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
And
thank you for
just those traffic windows are determined by TMC. TMC does traffic counts and determines when somebody can actually, do one-way traffic control, close a lane, those
Okay.
types of things.
TMC.
Traffic Management Center, it's all according to traffic counts on that given route.
Okay.
As far as, when they can create the least delay.
Yeah.
It's not, without the tunnel closing, of
Right.
course. But that's how that works.
Okay. Thank you.
Tomorrow?
No. So my question was on that night, I was using the map on my phone to kind of check the status, and it definitely indicated that after 6 p.m. the tunnel was open. So that was going to be my question, was kind of what led to that, what specifically led to that dissemination of that detail, that it was actually open when it wasn't, but I think we maybe just figured out how that happened, but, yeah.
Yeah, that's something we can investigate more. I mean, the information that we have, it goes to some of the traffic apps like Waze and Google Maps. And if somehow some information gets in there that's not supposed to, it seems very strange, we're gonna have to find out, then that's what would happen. And, we'll take a look at that and see how maybe that got in there.
So we're talking about messages at 6:30 would say it's open, but basically, if the power wasn't restored in Pacifica until 8:30, there would be no reason to think it would be open until that time, right?
Well, I think what he was saying was typically, and it's important to know that every year we do a drill out there. Every year in December, we do a drill, we test all the emergency systems. But this is something that hasn't occurred, that we didn't know could happen. So if the power goes out and the power comes back on, what, half hour, right? But the power didn't come back on in a normal way. And I don't know what the answer is. And we probably have to get an electrical engineer in here to explain that. But it's something that we're going to take into consideration again.
Well, I appreciate there's investigation
Right.
there. So just given that we're told that power came on in Pacific at 8:30, would assume that would relate to the power you get to the tunnel.
Correct.
So I don't know what that gap is, but my concern is at 8:30, you then began your restart, and it seems within a half hour, you knew that there was a problem.
Yes,
And the question is, but I can't see that there was any ever communication from the site to your Oakland Center that then would know that the tunnel in fact isn't open and it's experiencing problems so that that could be communicated, but there just aren't other further communications coming out after 9 o'clock.
Communications in that area are difficult for all of us also, as far as getting out. Their telephones are down if the power's out. In a lot of places, you don't have cell phone reception. I think they have something into, that they're going to acquire satellite phones at the site, and that was something else that they were working on, coming out of this.
A question for the Highway Patrol. You were on 92. Do you know how your teams would hear about the problems late into the evening?
Like I mentioned last month in the meeting, it was all through the radio. We had our units on scene that were on 92. As you remember, I mentioned that the permit, like they said, was at 7:30 p.m. They didn't even start their work till after 8 o'clock because some of their employees were delayed from because of the traffic as well. But yeah, so they were in communication with the units from San Francisco, our dispatch, which we don't share the same radio as San Francisco. So the San Francisco units have to radio into our dispatch center, which will then notify the Redwood City area units of what's going on over there.
And what's the nature to the cars? Do you have systems that aren't dependent on, let's say, cell phone access? If the cell phones are down, do you still have communication to your cars?
Yeah, we still have the two-way radio, but even in some areas, there are dead spots that just won't transmit to our dispatch center. And it's hard. We'll try via our computer, but that's also Wi-Fi. And
Our vehicle computers are dependent on cellular service, either Verizon or AT&T, depending on location. So
Right.
we have no cell service, we have no computers, but we may have radio coverage. But as you said, we do have areas where we have neither.
We're only 800 megahertz, and it's always been a challenge on the coast, 84, 35, always.
So if you looked at it, you know then that the Oakland Center had no way to know that the tunnel had gone back down. There's no record that it heard that the tunnel was still down, let's say, at 9 o'clock.
That's something I'd have to look at as far as when they knew things were going to be delayed. But as far as the tunnel, the control center getting back to them, how long, that's tough as far as this issue with PG&E with the 3 phases.
One of our major concerns is emergency services, emergency preparedness, and it does sound as though you have better communication systems than we were aware of, or at least that I was aware of, but the implications for emergency preparedness sound rather dire from the way you're describing your dependence on electricity. Could you comment on that?
Well, I've learned a couple of things in the past couple of days. It depends on the emergency. I mean, there's like massive emergency plans where if there was like a tsunami or some sort of fire, you just turn 92 and the tunnel went to one-way traffic and everyone exits and no one comes in. So, I mean, that's the real big, and the CHP would assist with that. That's the the big mighty plan, so no one would be stuck. You just clear if you had to evacuate the area. But in between that is they're going to upgrade their cell phones to satellite phones, and there's also some projects that we're investigating about bringing more power out to the tunnels so that if we do have an outage, we can operate the jet fans. When the tunnel was built, the only thing that could power it was a big, mighty diesel engine, and that's an anathema to the the beauty of the coastside, no one wants a big diesel engine that we have to test once a week and belches smoke into the air.
The size of that generator would be a 2,000-gallon fuel tank, big generator.
And the I mean, the best thing we would want out there would be redundancy. We'd like power coming from two sources. We do have power coming in from two wired, or I don't know, cables from Pacifica. But the best way would be to have it from two different substations, right? Two grids.
I'd also ask you about battery-driven UPS, which are now very large capacity.
That's something we're looking into too. You know anything about that?
See, the UPS system that we have now is just enough to turn off, to power down our SCADA system. And also we have we call it the blue lights, which are the service, just so anybody's trapped, but not to run the jet fans.
No, those, no, but there are now UPS systems that are high capacity.
Yeah.
Companies like Tesla now provide
We
that
started a
service.
discussion about that, and one of the electrical engineers that was talking about that seemed to think that the amount you would need to power that system, it would be too much. There's no room for it. But we'd have to get them to comment and go into the technicalities on that.
So you're saying you reviewed it's not feasible or it's under investigation?
We just started that discussion.
Okay.
Move on to Dan. You have a comment?
Yeah, question. So, it's my understanding, it's in the paper, there's two sources of power. It's my understanding, one from Pacifica and one coming up from Half Moon Bay. So my question is, what is the normal source?
Right now, we're using source B, which we call coming from Pacifica.
Okay, so that would, under normal circumstances, Pacifica would be the normal source. Now, what time did it go out, or 3 o'clock approximately? Okay. So what you're telling me is, telling us tonight that the second source, which will be coming from the south, Half Moon Bay, was
It was also down.
Was it balanced?
Both of them, so both source and A and B were down. But basically, the
Nothing's
substation
coming
is
from Half Moon Bay, he just said it's.
Something, I think there's a misunderstanding there. He's got two sources coming out of Pacifica. We are looking at what it would take to bring a second source from the grid on the Half Moon Bay side. Most tunnels are set up like that. I guess there were a lot of challenges to do that when they constructed this one.
So if the second source from Pacifica was balanced, then the tunnel should have been closed for only at most 30 minutes, because the system would sense it, the automatic transfer switch, sense it, and everything would be.
No, unfortunately, source A and B, which are the two sources, both of them are down because they're all coming from the same substation.
My understanding is that that's rare in itself, both those lines being down.
So it's really a parallel line from the same source.
Yeah.
So it's not,
But just two lines, basically.
it doesn't have two separate sources.
So, I mean, the way I understand it is you have two lines coming from one source, so that's not complete redundancy. If a tree falls on one line, then you still have power, but if the whole grid goes out in Pacifica, you don't. In a better world, we would have power coming from Pacifica and Half Moon Bay, because then we have redundancy, right? Coming from two sources. One goes out, then the other one is still on. But when the tunnel was being built, Half Moon Bay's substation would have been completely upgraded. It would have been very expensive, and it would have put the tunnel behind schedule, and it was just, it was a really difficult undertaking.
So there are power lines, though, that go towards Montera. I didn't follow them all the way. How far, there is a source coming from the south. To turn around through the mountain, or is it not hooked up, or?
Well, my understanding is they'd have to build a
Coming
new one coming from, I talked to the designers, they said they'd have to bring a new one up from Half Moon Bay to the tunnel. What you have now is you have two coming from, one winds around, I don't know why, but it winds around Montero Mountain and comes back to the tunnel. And I think the idea is to separate it from the other wire. Maybe that's what you've seen. I don't think there was anything coming up from Half Moon Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Well, if there is it sufficient?
Yeah,
For what the needs are too.
On the idea of a generator, I know that, you know, almost any company in the Bay Area that, you know, generators are just so common now. There's so much to lose if power goes out. They supply, they take the expense and have a generator. So we've experienced, you know, it took me 8.5 hours to get home tonight. I was one of those guys that kind of, you know, figured, okay, power's gonna come on, and stuck it out, and then got stuck in the worst of the one-lane control on 92.
Okay, we're gonna move it up into the community if you wrap up what you're saying there, Dan.
So my concern is that, you know, the power system certainly needs to be improved to a degree that this doesn't happen again. It's not acceptable, in my opinion, and I believe the others in the council, it's just not acceptable to be closed for that long. So what proposals, I'd like to be really clear on the proposals that you're working towards. I think a generator should be considered, personally.
I think both of those things are being considered, that, you know, the generator, the challenges aren't only expense, the challenges are Coastal Commission, Air Resource Board, environmental issues, and I'm sure bringing a line in, you have to, you know, go through some of those issues also. That was my understanding from the very beginning as far as a generator.
And they have hybrid solutions. I mean, you can have a better electric generator, but also there's an idea of maybe bringing in a generator just to power the to boost the batteries that are out there as well. So they're looking at a lot of options.
And the other thing, there was a quite windy day. Does
Dan?
the tunnel monitor the flow of air from the passive flow of air?
Dan, we need to move on to the.
Just last question.
Isn't that too long?
We're past clarifying questions.
Hold on a second. Len took more than 5 minutes.
Dan, we need to move on.
I just want, about the...
We have
move on?
three slips from the audience. We can come back to the council after that. First is for Harold Herman.
Thank you. So my name is Harold Herman, Moss Beach. So I have two pieces here. One is, I'm not sure if I'm a resident that I'm getting comfortable based on what I'm hearing here. I think it's a complete failure of crisis management. I see a lot of finger pointing here between agencies, PG&E, Power Grid, this and that, and Half Moon Bay, another power supply potentially. But I think what got lost now is really the trust of the community into Caltrans and the owner of that situation. Right? You have the slide going out, that's another piece the community is looking at. The concern about crisis management, communication is clearly one thing, but you know, working in business, communication plan to see who's in charge, you know, where the messaging is going, who's receiving it, who's sending the messages. So what happened here, that shouldn't happen. And that should be a plan of emergency drill, etc. So the reason why I filled out the slip was really, well, this was not a disaster per se, this was just a power outage. So we heard 2-3 weeks ago on the news, so we have been in an earthquake drought. So scientists stepping forward, earthquake drought, so there's an estimate 3 to 4 major events every 100 years now. Well, that's a change. And I've been here for 15 plus years, I've seen the tunnel build. We became actually pretty close friends with some of the tunnel builders. And during one of the social events, they basically started talking, and they said the following. And it was along the lines, so we recommended a flexible tube through the mountain, because there are major fault lines running through the Montero Mountain, which are part of the San Gregorio and San Andreas fault system. And then Caltrans overrode the recommendation, and we have now a fixed tube through the mountains. So can you comment on that? What's the size and rating of that tunnel? you see here, because, I mean, I said, this was a power outage, this was not a tsunami, this was not a major earthquake or a fire. So any comments on that?
Background's maintenance, so I'd have to get back to you on that.
Because I think that's important to know. Though. I mean, if the mountain moves, and I'm not an engineer, but what they said is that if you have a flexible tube, that tube would move with the mountain, versus, okay, you put a static and you put the rebar and whatever, however that works. I'm thinking the mountain wants to move, and the map is out there. But there are 5, 6, 7 fault lines running through that Montero mountain. And, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Inside our facility, inside the tunnel itself, we have mounted a earthquake monitoring system. We have that in place.
I actually talked with a geologist yesterday about this, who says that the tunnel is actually designed so that there are no faults actually crossing the tunnel. That doesn't mean there aren't faults nearby, but that the alignment of the tunnel is...
No, there's a map from Caltrans that actually showed all the...
That is not the case. Okay, so my geologist might have been wrong.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
there's a map out there.
Okay. Greg?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if we couldn't establish a couple of requirements here. You know, if you can't lower the water, you got to raise the bridge. One requirement would be you cannot close that tunnel to emergency services. I would like to get that established. There have to be fire and ambulance, you know, people allowed to get through, and maybe, you saw my email, half a dozen other people. Now, that gets back to what's the perceived risk? Well, a real disaster, we're not going to have power. That tunnel's got to be open. Station a fire truck, a tow truck, and an ambulance, one or both sides of that tunnel. If somebody has an accident, haul them out. That tunnel has to be open in a no-power scenario. And I would like that established in writing if the board is willing to agree. Cannot rely on electricity, just like we know we can't rely on cell phones in a real disaster. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
Just a CHP good comment. We asked that question last time, and we're told that even under the conditions we were at, you could have taken people through.
Well, what I said was in case of a life or death situation, in that situation, we still got to follow the rules, which I just learned today, which is a state fire marshal law. I knew that I was told that there was some type of air quality law that we had to follow, right? When I reported last month. And in this situation, the same thing. We're just waiting, just as we're waiting for the power to get restored, so we can continue with our services, right? We're following that protocol, and there's liability involved. They say we do go ahead and make that decision. But there's difference between life or death. If that's the situation, we'll do one-way control, and we'll start requesting what we have to do to evacuate people from a life or death situation. Right. Not more of a, you know, it's unfortunate and an inconvenience and waiting, because even our units, and we have to get around and respond to calls, and we're same thing, we're stuck in the traffic as well.
We're also looking at the old route too, and opening up discussions about that.
Can I just throw this?
No, really, no.
Actually, like that, but that's okay. They're not on call for this.
Public will have their moment, right? Just not right now. The public will have their moment, just not right now.
Okay.
Is that right?
Does she have a speaker slip?
You don't, no speaker?
I just came late, I'm sorry.
You can fill one out.
Oh, I do.
Did that answer? Oh.
You mentioned earlier that in a major evacuation emergency that you would open the tunnel in 92.
Or life or death, like a life or death
Okay, so that
situation.
would not, so power would not be a factor
And
there.
that's, I mean, I'm not gonna be able to answer on that. That's something that, on the next meeting on April 24th, maybe, the preparedness, have that in place.
Okay. We have another slip here from Wendy Singh. Is that how, am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, you got
Okay.
it. Hi, I'm Wendy Singh. So I'm a resident of Moss Beach. So I want to ask some clarifying question regarding the communication piece again. So I'm looking over the F511 SFA, which thank you for sharing that information. I wasn't aware of it till today. But basically the last information from there about the Highway 1 closure was from 8:30. And if it was open at 12:30, there weren't any communications that it was open from 12:30, and actually none for even March 13th the next day. So if we were instructed to look at that for information about the tunnel reopening, it seems like whoever's in charge of either the signaler or that department of 501 SFA was actually not providing new information. And this may not seem like a big deal for people who are like asleep at night, but I was actually working a night shift as a physician in San Francisco City. So I was actually like waiting on and reading next door And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I saw the tunnel was open. I actually drove home instead of staying in the hospital like longer that night. So I do think having updated information, even overnight, is helpful for the residents.
I think that's something we have to look at as far as, I think typically you just see it when there is a change, right? But there was no change. We're still closed, so updates in that fashion.
Yeah, did you look at 511?
That's what I just looked through right now, and I skimmed through all from.
Yeah, I have that on my timeline as well. There was the last alert that came out on 511 was at 8:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Still a big gap.
Yeah,
Well,
and nothing
yeah, that's-
after that about the tunnel closure. The next thing was by the District 4 director at 4 something in the morning.
Nothing about the tunnel.
That's something we'll look into. I had been told that that's posted on 511, and on our quick maps as well. That's something we'll investigate to make sure that information, that would have solved a lot.
Can I offer one piece of clarification? 511 exists inside of TMC, but it's operated by MCC, which is a separate entity from Caltrans and from CHP. They're all in the same consolidated area and have access to similar information, but the person that is in charge of that may have just not been paying attention at that time. So that's another question for MCC, maybe, not necessarily Caltrans.
Thank you.
But we'll get back to you on that, because we double down on, communications, makes sure things get out there and get posted. I'm sure Tony would have made the announcement if he didn't, because he's probably watching it as well, the director. He's very involved. Yeah. So he would have liked to post it himself.
Well, he did at 4 a.m.
4 o'clock.
Yeah. He was probably sleeping at midnight.
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
Thank you, Wendy. And Morgan Sarabian, thank you for doing this for me.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm late. I think we've all kind of heard, I'm Morgan. I live on 92. I've lived here all my life. So for us, it's been really fun. We have 3 kids. We've been looking at the signs, the message boards to find out which days I'm going to need to either figure out lodging or not go crazy, because last night it was from, pretty much 7:30 till 6:45, and I can tell you that because I have to work at 6:30. I'm exhausted. I'm on call. I work in a hospital. My husband works for San Mateo County. He's on call. So it's been hell. Sorry for my French, but not knowing, I have to plan my schedule. I need to let people know, and it is life or death. Like it is. A CT scan, if it's your grandpa, you want me over there, within a certain amount of time. And for me, I need to be able to plan. Like I can't plan. I don't know how else to ask for help, but I don't know. There's no number there, and looking at next door was the only way I had any sort of idea of what was going to happen that night. And I just don't know who to go to, because I've stopped and talked to different crews, which have told me to call PG&E and lodge a complaint, which I did. And then they said, oh, we're going to do it 3 days in a row from Tuesday through Friday, which I'm learning. But that's the middle of our work week. So it doesn't help the neighbors. I get that there's a lot of work to be done, but it seems like it's being piecemealed, and I want to know, what is the expectation? I need to be able to plan my life. Is there anything that you guys can offer as far as like what that is going to look like?
Well, something I did hear too is, hey, they're going in a lot earlier than what they should be. If you do see something like that, I mean, that's a permit job. There are permit inspectors that have to, basically say whether they're doing their work correctly or not, whether they're out there at the right time. If you have a complaint for something that's happening on the Caltrans right-of-way, go onto the website and fill out a customer service request and basically say, hey, this contractor is coming in here 2 hours early. We can get that to that permits inspector, and we'll keep an eye on them. Or maintenance will go out. Ray went out and checked on them that next night, right? So we'll go out and check on them and see if they are conforming to what they're supposed to. As far as the overall,
like noise and just life, and I mean,
well,
you get
as
the
far as the overall,
safety.
Length of the work,
Yeah.
or the time frame,
Yeah.
if you want to know that.
That would be great, because just knowing if it's going to be going every week, 3 days a week, I'm going to have to figure out where we're going to
It should
stay.
be simple for me to go to the permit
Okay.
engineer basically and
Okay.
go, hey, what's What's the time
Because
span
it's
on that
stop,
permit?
you know, it's past the quarry and it's all the way down and we're right on that stretch, so it's like the 3 houses that are just, you
Right.
know,
All
I'm
the
sorry.
worst right
Yeah,
there.
and like I said, we're close enough to where I get to take call for the hospital, but I can lose that real quick and nobody's gonna come pay my wage. So I just wanna make sure that that's addressed because this is unfair for me to not have planning, you know? It's putting me in
Are you
alert.
saying that you can't get out? Or are you
No,
saying
yeah,
it's
because the
noisy?
traffic stopped, like we can't get out. Or if there's people screaming and honking and we're up all night because people are upset, there's that too. There's 2 different things, but one of them has been where my husband's stuck in that traffic. He's in his vehicle for San Mateo County and he can't get through. Nobody's gonna give him a red flag and says, you get to go home real quick,
We
you
need-
have to
we
turn
need to
around.
move on.
That's what I'm just asking, is there some sort of contact we have for emergency? For that kind of
Permitted
thing?
engineer, so
So is there a number that we can get, like,
I don't know who that is right now. I'll have to
Okay.
look into it.
because that's kind of the consensus I feel is that it's, I don't, you know, going online and calling, it just be nice to have that contact. I don't know what to do for tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's so many different departments and different agencies out there. I mean, sometimes it's even difficult for us to figure out who's who, but I mean, I can get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Just to kind of clarify, you live right where they're doing the work, right?
Yeah, yeah. But no trees, tree limbs that are, you know, probably going to be down, but yeah, they're not going to be the trees in my house.
Let's go one more round around the council, and let's keep it to 2 minutes each.
So now that we know that the tunnel closure is required by the state fire marshal guidelines, is there any possibility of Caltrans and CHP working with the fire marshal's office to get those guidelines changed to at least allow a small number of vehicles through at a time, maybe instead of unrestricted vehicle traffic, maybe no more than 5 vehicles in the tunnel at a time, or just something like that. Because it seems like the guideline is a good guideline, but it's clearly a little stricter than is necessary.
I have to get back to you on that. That's a question that's already been asked. I read an email about that. Seems unlikely, but we can ask again and try and see if that's a viable option. Like I said, I know a lot of people just drive through it, but it's the fire marshal plan that we agreed to before we even opened the tunnel, so.
It's not just an accident or a fire concern, it's a carbon monoxide concern. And when the power's down, you can't monitor the air.
So that's true.
But I will say that the tunnel engineer who designed that ventilation system and was there at the tunnel opening said they had originally expected those fans would run 50% or more of the time, and that it had actually been running a very small percentage of the time because the elevation of the tunnels allows a chimney effect, so you get natural airflow. So these are all things that we have more data now. Before the tunnel opened, they didn't have that data.
I think a lot of the issue is that you just, when the power's down, you can't monitor that air. You can't say.
Yes, you
yeah.
can.
Even with the UPS system?
With a battery-powered CO monitor with transmitters, you can monitor that tunnel. And cameras.
I'd have to go to the emergency operations system.
Okay,
If
Greg.
the power's down, then you can't.
Let's keep this up here
That's
right
something
now.
we'll look into. That's something we'll look into as well.
Okay, Barb?
Good question.
I just want to say that I really appreciate Caltrans coming. Ray, I didn't recognize you without your hard hat on. But I really appreciate it. It looks, I hope that we just make this a learning experience with the CHP. I'm a 47-year employee of PG&E, so I get what you're saying. I understand it. I just hope we can somehow make this where it doesn't happen again. I know that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's difficult for us. I mean, the first thing I thought is like, wow, we built this spectacular tunnel, spent all this money, and then we're gonna close it. It seems, I don't want to say, it's an abundance of safety. I mean, at first you're like, oh, that's preposterous, but it's really not. It's an abundance of safety, but we'd like to get it so that this doesn't happen.
I mean, for me, that's what these are all about. I
Right.
enjoy
Sure.
coming to these, putting, faces to names, those types of things, opening up the communication. I grew up in Pacifica and Montera, so I was in the community for 30 years, and I worked out of that Half Moon Bay Yard for 10 years. I remember having Devil Slide closed for 6 months. I mean, that was how it used to be, so, yeah, I mean, that used to be, it took me 40 minutes from Montera to Half Moon Bay.
So this is, well,
I'm just,
Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, echoing Barbara's comments, and thank you guys for coming and bringing so many people. I feel like we learned a lot tonight. I think just the events of March 12th were a huge annoyance for a lot of people. You know, people had to wait around. It took them a long time to get home. Some people had to even stay in hotels. But I think everyone's major concern is what would happen in the event of an emergency. And you know, if there is an earthquake, probably the power is going to go out. Even if we have a backup source from Half Moon Bay, I mean, if it's the big one, what's to say that like we're going to have power anywhere? And even if the tunnel is able to be open for emergency vehicles, there's still a lot of people who need to get home to their families or their children who are in schools. You know, I mean, I think the main concern is finding a way to keep traffic flowing in the event of an emergency and to make sure that everyone's able to reunite with their families. And so I think it would be great if we could get some answers to some of the questions we've asked here tonight and to hear back from you on the issues of communication and backup power at the tunnel, or a way to keep the tunnel open in the event of no power, such as going around the old route or things like that.
something else on that too, I know that they are putting our dispatchers at the TMC through extra training to recognize those issues on the radio when you see an issue on two routes that may cause a bigger issue.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
Tamara?
Yeah, a lot of the thoughts have already been said and spoken, so just thank you for sharing all the information. We learned a lot.
Randy?
Just to thank you to Jeff, because I've been in touch with you, been very effective in bringing resources here, and we'll follow up and get a final communication, but it's been great to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
Dan?
Glad you guys came too.
Yeah, thank you. Also followed up with a couple hard questions. So.
Is that the thanks we get?
I didn't want to waste your time coming out here. So there is a UPS system. One would think that the critical monitoring systems would be on that UPS system. If it's not designed that way, if it's not a large enough UPS system to handle the critical elements like carbon monoxide monitoring, I'm in full agreement with Dave's idea that, you know, I mean, there were gale force winds that day. The airflow should be easily monitored. Somebody, the decision maker, should have that data readily available. It should have the data from any carbon monoxide that may be in there, and somebody should have a reasonable protocol, however it is, you know, 5 cars at a time or whatever, monitored carefully, you know, have person in the front, the end of the tunnel, somehow.
I just
to make
wrote
it-
that down as far as the CO2 monitors on the UPS or something, you know, separate from the power source. So I will definitely ask those questions as far as what the possibility of something like that is.
And you can keep the Midcoast Community Council in the loop as far as all the conversations going forward with the alternate source from Half Moon Bay or generator, any discussions that...
Be the single source on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm writing it all down. I've got it. So,
Appreciate it.
You know, it's a work in process. They're exploring ways of delivering more power or alternative power.
Something else
Generators or another line.
Something else that we did with Half Moon Bay also, as we were talking about, you know, making our maintenance contacts available to you. We're on call 24/7. So that was something we talked about, and that's something we could talk about too.
Okay, thanks again for coming out.
I just want to comment on your, it's not just a matter of monitoring the CO2s and then the other products of the motorist engines, but it is how we can exhaust those gases out. Because if the presence of CO2 there is dangerous to the heart, to the health, and to the people around it, unfortunately.
But there are times that there's so much wind blowing through the tunnel.
We know that northbound, yes, we have what we call the wind milling. You can see our fans running.
Right. Yeah, all the time.
But the southbound is different. It still stays the same. There's no air movement in the southbound.
Go ahead. I really do want to echo what other people have said, that We are very thankful that you all came. There's such a good breadth of experience and information here. We still need more answers. I'm glad you're writing down our questions, and I trust you will get back to us. We've wanted over the years to have more contact with Caltrans. Things do come up beyond just this particular issue, so I'm hoping this will be just the first of a dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And express my apology for the inconvenience. It's just that we are concerned about your safety.
No, I understand.
Yeah, please. Yeah. And we are doing something about it.
Should we take this time to get an update on the area that's slipping?
No, no.
No?
No,
This is our-
it's not on the topic.
Talk about it afterwards.
Council activity.
So I've been on the Canitas Creek Citizen Advisory Council these last 6 months. The meeting's just wrapped up on that. Post and the county, primarily Post, have drawn up a document summarizing everything we've been.
Could we have some quiet back there so we can hear?
That we have been talking about, and that will go to various people in all the agencies that are involved. May or may not be made public as is. But the big thing is they've put out the proposal for the firm to draw up the concepts, and they expect construction to start by the end of this year on some parts of it. And they will make sure that they keep community involvement. There'll be multiple public meetings.
So when will Tunitas, is there approximate expected
This is
date
just
for
an
to open?
announcement.
Okay, and there is a timeline for when the various parts will be done. The county has a website. They will update the county website now that we've wrapped up all this. But the goal was to have it fully open to the public 3 years from the date of purchase, which would be early 2020.
Thanks.
Are there any other council activity announcements? Glenn?
Well, I've been in touch with Ellie Dahlman, and also received correspondence from Peggy concerning coming here for a meeting. This relates to parks. So I've been in touch with her about it, but I'll bring that up when we discuss future agendas.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
okay. I wanted to let people know that the airport had asked for someone on the MCC to attend a meeting where they're going to consider requests for proposals for the new restaurant at the airport, and Dan is going to attend that meeting.
We don't have a date yet?
Pardon me?
A date?
They're going to contact you,
Okay. I have not been contacted, so.
but you're on their list.
No approximate date of any.
Future agendas?
So we've had exchanges with Peggy Jensen, who has interest in coming to give us.
No.
You said future agendas.
Yes, this is just an announcement of future agendas. It's not a discussion.
No, it's a discussion.
It's a discussion item. That's when we have a chance to discuss it.
All right.
Well, so the request to come to talk to us about parks on multiple points. The Parks Directorship has been open for some time, and there are questions of the status of different parts of it. So in talking to Ellie, there's a clarification as to whether, A, we'd like to have that on May 8th when she is available,
We've already confirmed that.
and two, whether to make it a general update or on county parks as a whole, or more specific emphasis on the parks in the Midcoast.
That's under discussion.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what, so we going ahead, yes?
She is coming on the 8th. I haven't talked to her yet. We haven't put this together yet. We can talk about it. Well, she is planning to come.
No, they were looking for a final confirmation.
She's got a final confirmation.
Okay.
And on the 24th, third in this series will be the sheriff and emergency communications personnel. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Do you have a goal as far as what you would like to see written up from these 3 sessions?
I think we need to figure that out for the agenda for next time. We can put that together.
The point to confirm is we're not necessarily then looking to have a written thing to approve at that point, but to
We
discuss
may,
what we'd like to write up.
we should, the 3 of us that are working on this should decide that and put it on the
Well,
next meeting.
There's a chance to communicate that to the council as a whole, so is your hope to do that?
I would hope to discuss it with the 2 of you and decide whether to bring it up as an agenda item next time.
Just on that note, I do have confirmation from Brian Mulvera that he will attend that meeting on the 24th and may bring the OES manager, Kevin Rose.
Okay, great.
I have 2 questions about the discussion tonight about the tunnel closure, and I didn't know if you guys are still going to be in conversation with some of the people that were still here tonight to bring that up now, and then.
Well, overall, Jeff has been very active as a point of contact in terms of reaching him. So independent of the next meeting we have, I'll follow up just both to get anything he might bring back from that meeting, as well as to let him know we'll be in touch to bring something to him either in 2 weeks or shortly beyond 2 weeks.
Okay, so if I had something, it just kind of popped into my head, it was like after they already left, can I
Okay.
raise it now and then
Sure.
that's something you can bring to them?
Yep.
I don't know, maybe it already has come up before. One of them was, this was about the issue on March 12th, but last night, the traffic, the tunnel through the traffic was completely stopped. I only know my experience. I think we were in the tunnel for around an hour.
What time?
Between 5 and 6. Last night between 5 and 6.
Was that when it was backed up, when they were bringing the vehicle up and they had to?
So on the issue of CO2 buildup, my question is is there any information or data, what's happening in the tunnel when there's so many cars? I mean, I understand power is on and the fans are moving, but.
Well, I think the point of the fans is they're supposed to, you can sit there for a long, long time.
And
the
there's
fans take care
no,
of it.
yeah, okay. So there's no because normally the, traffic's moving and the fans help keep it going,
Right.
but yeah, okay.
It's similar to what they get on the weekend, so they have a lot of data on that.
Okay. And then the other thing was I was just wondering if there's any, other examples, not even here, but just nationally across the country of similar.
Well, the tunnel I've looked at that's the most relevant for us is Eisenhower Tunnel in Colorado. It's a little bit less than twice the length of ours, so tried to get information on both their power systems.
Yeah.
And
So it's already kind of on the radar. Okay. Thank you.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.